All right, welcome back for that quick break. It's now time for us to hit into the next discourse. We'll be looking at the abuse of the Federal Character Commission and the policy talking about federal character. Uh, in 2013, we had the then Senate President David Mark saying that the flagrant violation of the federal character principles in the civil service and advised the Federal Character Commission to readdress the situation in the best interest of the nations. And in 2016, we also had the Deputy Senate President talking about Ike Kwerimadu, who said the abuse of the federal character principle was partly responsible for Nigeria remaining stagnant. Uh, Based on these two very, very strong opinions, we decided to look into this matter, and another person brought Ariyo-Dare. Atoye is the person who will be helping us decipher what the problem is as regards the abuse of the federal character issue. Good morning, nice to have you join us.
Good morning once again. Thanks.
Do you agree with the Senate President and the current Deputy Senate President? The abuse of the federal character is what is keeping Nigeria stagnant?
To a reasonable extent, I would say I want to not completely align.
Okay.
There are different angles to this. The federal character principle, I think, was put in place to address the nature of our country, which is heterogeneous in nature, and so that any government of the day will not be able to take advantage of the process. I mean, the advantage of government in order to confer, do advantage on one ethnic group or one religious group or whichever perspective you want to say. However, there are two things here. That's why I said I don't want to completely agree with them. It is either we implement federal character principle to the letter, or we jettison it completely for merit, like in the United States of America and some other part of the world where it doesn't matter where you come from. But a situation whereby we use it when it suits us, and we decide to put it aside when we think we can take advantage of the process doesn't augur well for our nation. And that's why I believe that they're having that concern, like the former Senate President said, David Mark, was probably maybe haven't noticed the fact that the federal civil service probably maybe in some departments or agencies are badly skewed to favor some certain person. For instance, like in Nigeria today, we know that there are agencies where has been cornered by a particular tribe, or it has been cornered by a specific ethnic group. There are some of these agencies, and it's so obvious for Nigerians, not just merely going there, even in terms of appointments, appointment right from the creation of those agencies. For instance, like the EFCC had been issued right from when it was created, 2003, 2004. It's been headed by a section of the country that's from the northern part of the country, nobody from the western region, nobody from the eastern region, So it's part of the things. And there are times that these people really don't want to. It's not as if deliberately they decide to do appointment, to favor their own people at a go. But when you have somebody, maybe from the northwest or from the northeast, was appointed as maybe chairman of EFCC, wants to bring a good number of his people in. Another person from North Central want to bring a good number of people. So today, if you go to EFCC, probably maybe if you do the analysis, probably you will see more than enough number of people from a particular part of the country. So, and I want to say that why the buck stops on the table of the president to ensure that these laws are obeyed. It is also incumbent on the National Assembly to have a way of getting to sanction of some of these agencies. They will always come to you to do budget presentation. They will always come to you to seek one approval or the other. It's always an opportunity for the National Assembly, to take advantage of those processes, to call them to order and to insist that certain things. And I think that's where Nigerians have to support the National Assembly here, because you will see that in some of those developed countries, if there are obvious violations, the National Assembly or the lawmakers may decide not to even attend to your request until you apply the remedy. But we're always in the business of blackmailing the National Assembly because they have their own obvious flaws, simply because over time they've not been able to defend their own uh, responsibilities. They've not been able to do certain things that the public will want to consider as in their own best interest, and they've been perceived as probably maybe enjoying certain more than enough emoluments and benefits. So that has actually put them at a very precarious situation to be able to defend our laws as any lawmaker or any we want. So, but believe me sincerely, there are obvious manipulations on the federal character principle of this country. We've seen it probably in successive government, and it's becoming even more rampant under this administration. And you see that this is one thing that Nigerians have been, crying and talking about.
Now, still talking about this, he said as a result of this, it has caused a bit of stagnancy in the country. But then some other critics have said that this is responsible for agitations ongoing in parts of the country. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, agitation. Stagnancy, it has to be scientifically proven, because when you say federal character principle, it's affecting issue of stagnancy. Is it then something has to come first? Probably maybe it has undermined merit. And so when it undermines merit and you don't get the best to do the job, then in that instance, it could be a problem. And federal character principle as a program or as a policy on its own, you realize that it has an automatic disadvantage. It's automatic. What is the automatic disadvantage? Is that it has limited the resources or the human resource available to fill some certain position, to choosing from different part of the country. Not necessarily who is the best among the best from that country. However, we cannot continue to say simply because we want to choose the best of the best, because of the kind of nation we have, that we now have to load everything in one part of the country. For instance, historically speaking, the reasons why there was serious agitation during the colonial period and mutual suspicion, especially between the eastern part of Nigeria and the northern part of Nigeria, if you check through history, it's simply because of this issue. And I'm sure that the issue of the federal character principle flow from this historical challenge. What happened was that because of the low level of Western education in the northern part of the country, most of the jobs, clerical, administrative, and some other jobs that the Europeans cannot fill were filled by people from the from the eastern part of the Igbos, from the eastern part of the country. And that's one of the things that have been creating a lot of mutual distrust, because at that point in time, people from the south, from the eastern part of the country, were seen as probably having the advantage. And there is this, I can't do just the word jealous, or some kind of unease on the part of the people, the son of the soil. Fine, you don't have this capacity to do it. These people have it, but continue to have concern. Why do we, all sorts of things like that. So that mutual suspicion, part of the things that actually led to this federal character principle. For instance, there was a crisis that happened in 1953 when representatives from the northern part of the country were booed in Lagos simply because they did not support. That was the first major crisis we had in Nigeria, that they did not support self-rule for Nigeria to become independent, when they didn't go in line with that motion that was moved in 1953. Do you know that because of that they were booed out of the parliament, there was tension in Kano, and when Action Group, led by Awolowo, decided to go to Kano to do some advocacy, there was that tension, and it led to some crisis. And where the people, and that Awolowo is even from the western part of the country, but in the crisis that ensued, where the people who were the victims are people from the eastern part of the country. Not necessarily but because there has been that mutual suspicion that you people have been coming, to take our jobs. You are behaving as if to say you are superior to us. You are behaving as if you know more than we do. So that mutual, I think the issue of the federal character principle flows from all these challenges that we've had over time in order to be able to address it. But unfortunately, you see the tension, not to answer my sister, you see the tension that is rising in the system simply because of, for instance, this current administration that have been perceived by, as different segments, especially even in media, Nigerians talking that as clannish, as provincial in terms of the appointment that have been made, that is the worst we've had so far. Under any administration in Nigeria in terms of doing justice to federal character principle and giving people appointments. So that's why you see the level of, agitation that, look, we really need to find a solution.
So do you think it should be scrapped? Because the presidency and the National Assembly that you see are supposed to be watchdogs or supposed to enforce the federal character principle in places where it has been abused, are also guilty of this. Should it be totally scrapped?
You see, my problem is if it's totally scrapped and you have someone like the current president, it may lead to serious crisis in this country simply because I don't think the mindsets and the workings around the current president, he just believes that he can, for instance, appoint people from any part that they think, especially from his own part of the country, that they think they can work with him. That's the people I know, and he made that very clear when people started, complaining about his appointment early in this administration. When he said, "Look, it is my right, and to appoint the people that I think they can work with me."
But the issue here is that the people he has appointed seem not to be. How will I put it? Competent. Not necessarily where they come from, first of all. Nigerians started talking about where they come from when it showed that they were not competent. And even the wife of the president.
You see, provincialism, to be clannish, automatically also breeds incompetence one way or the other, because you'll not be able to see beyond certain things, because you're limited to people who you think are around you, people you have known over time. So it's part of the reason why we're having those problems. And you see, the wife of the president himself made it very clear when, just like you said, in his own address then to the BBC, and he was surprised about the way things were unfolding. You see, the arrangement in the APC, let me just put that was, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, that's the national leader of the party, was even going to be the one providing or helping with the human resource, that we're driving, the process, all sorts of things, maybe bringing a lot of people on board. But, the president also has his own mindset. So, but in all sense of, by all sense of responsibility, I think that we don't need to scrap it. If we scrap it, it could be one of the things that can seriously, put this country closer to the path of crisis. Call it disintegration or sort of, because when there are that kind of law, it's not going to give some people that restraining thinking, a caution for them to know that, look, you have to do due diligence in your appointment, some of the things you're doing. That's why you say the Constitution says that you have to appoint ministers from the 30 states of the Federation. And also talked about even in appointing service chiefs and some other things, all those things, federal character principle are to be followed. And it's part of the reasons why people are seriously agitated. When you look at the security architecture of this country, where you only have two exceptions, the chief of defense staff, who is from Southwest, and chief of, I think, naval staff also. Chief of naval staff. No, sorry, chief of army. Air
staff. Sadiq.
Who is from? Is this one is from Calabar? One is from, I think, it's naval. So, those are the two exceptions. The rest from northern part, including both the internal security agents. So that has been generating a lot of concern. I know people talked about based on competence. I can tell you that people who are more competent than even some of those people within the hierarchy of these agencies and military agencies. So I think that this is one thing that the National Assembly must insist that we get right. We just have to get it right because it is just a policy that has been created by some of our leaders as an instrument to ensure that we have a greater participation of Nigerians.
Now, I'm talking about a National Assembly getting it right. How would you, suggest that we go about it constitutionally? Because you mentioned prosecution of the MDAs. Probably that will be a way. Because sometime, I think 2013 or so, someone in the House of Reps moved a motion for the prosecution of the MDAs that do not apply these principles in recruitment. Would that really go along? How do they go about it constitutionally to ensure that it stands?
You see, there are three ways to it. Section 14 of the 1999 Constitution as amended expressly, put this in place, that issue of respecting federal character principle and justice in terms of appointment. That's very clear. Now, this is Constitution here. We're talking about Constitution. We're not even talking about policy. The National Assembly, first in this regard, the National Assembly must be up and alive to its own duty by insisting that, look, you have done this appointment in flagrant abuse of the Constitution, and this is our position. We are not going to approve this and this. We are not even going to look at the budget until you are able to read, because this Nigerians are going to be with them. Okay. And I know that the National Assembly itself is also a victim of ethno-religious issues sometimes, because the president has to come from a part to say, no, let the president, have his way. But believe me sincerely, the first, because already you form a government, and you're going to wait till another 3 or 4 years to be able to change the government if government has become so clannish or provincial in nature. But between that period, because you come in, you start making an appointment, and it decides to, find out that it's like this president is not going to do justice in terms of appointment. So what do we do in that instance? The onus is now on the National Assembly to continue to insist that the laws of the country are respected by insisting that, look, you have to maintain federal character principle, and the National Assembly should constantly vet the appointment, not to make suggestion on who to appoint. That's when people accuse them of overreaching themselves, but constantly vet the list of appointments, including the one they have to clear and the one they don't have to clear, because they have to spend the money that the National Assembly has to budget. So when they vet it and look at the fact that, Mr. President, it's your prerogative, it's your right to appoint those people, but we think you have not done due diligence in terms of respecting the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria when it comes to
all right. Finally, before we let you go, my last question will be, do you think we can remedy this situation as it is already, like you rightly pointed, there are some ministries that you just know this more like northerners all holding sway here, easterners holding sway here. Can we have a mechanism where we can repost any ministry where we see we have a lot of people, certain clan there? Is it possible to take them away from there and post them into different ministries? Could that solve and rebalance the equation?
We can substantially mitigate this, especially those ones who are within the purview of the president to do in terms of appointment, or in terms of asking the head of service or the government, secretary of government of the federation to do the needful in terms of reorganizing the system in such that it's going to have
equal balance of.
You can achieve equal balance. That's why I'm saying substantially mitigate, so that people will see that there is a work in progress in order to remedy a bad situation. For instance, if the president had not appointed somebody from the northern part of the country into the NIA, probably the agitation will have reduced. But what we've seen in the NIA, again, that further helped the agitation, that look, it's like this president is not even ready to listen to us. So these are part of the concerns that Nigerians are having in the public service. I'm sure that if there are agencies where all the president needs to do is, look, ask the head of service, the secretary of government of the federation, probably set up a committee and say, look, there is need for us to respect the federal character principle, that to what extent can we substantially mitigate the hues and cries of Nigerians in terms of the fact that we have not done some certain things right. And I'm sure there is that substantial opportunity to mitigate this, not necessarily to completely address this injustice in quote, but to at least give Nigerians that perception that I'm ready to do what is right. And if there are things I've done in the past that I know, okay, I'm sorry, I think I've learned more. I thought maybe I was trying to get people that I think can help me, to do this job. However, subsequently, this is what I will be doing in order to bring justice, to the system. So I think there is opportunity to do that if the president is willing to do so.
All right, this hoping the president would be willing, but if he's not willing, Nigerians come 2019, you have the opportunity to change the status quo and the narrative. I want to say big thank you to the pro-democracy convener in the person of Ariyo-Dare Atoye, who has been awesome this morning trying to see how we can reduce the abuse of the federal character principle. We'll be going for another quick break. When we come back, we'll be looking at the cattle colony, the politics in the cattle colony, and which way to go. We know that some APC governors seem to be on the side of the government as regards that, while the PDP governors and states seem to say a total no to that. I'll be having a guest in the studio to look at that particular issue.